Dr. Kathryn Spurling served in the Navy and taught military history and strategic studies at the Australian Defence Force Academy from 1997 to 2004, staying on as a visiting fellow until 2011. Dr. Spurling is now an adjunct research associate at Flinders University and is co-authoring a book on women in the ADF. Dr. Spurling, welcome to The Drum.
Well, hello.
Now, do you agree with this recommendation by DART that there should be a royal commission into these sexual abuse allegations?
I actually was very interested in the reporter's précis just then, except there were a couple of things that did worry me. I agree with Elizabeth. I think she's done a magnificent job, Elizabeth Broderick. I think we have to have some greater inquiry, but we have to make sure that these victims are not victimised again. Some of them are still serving. Some of them are known to others. Even when I come on a program and I speak out against the behaviour against women, I get all this hate mail. It's ridiculous because of a small group of very hyper-masculine men who are concerned about, I think, perhaps their own sexuality.
Has that changed over time for you in particular when you talk about that response?
I think it has. In the beginning, there was hazing. I was hazed. My late husband, who was at Creswell, was hazed. My elder son went through ADFA. His hazing was entirely different than we received. What we received was fairly innocuous. At ADFA, it became really nasty, and I had a lot of young women and some young men knocking on my door, telling me the most appalling stories. And these were being victimised. These victims were being victimised again, and they didn't see any end. The people who committed these crimes were allowed to stay in the military.
Right.
What I would like to say about, you singled out the Navy. I don't entirely agree with that. The Navy is perhaps known for a lot of these cases, but that's because the Navy has been very forward with women in the military. We've had women deployed to warships since 1992. We've had women on training on submarines since 1998. We've led the world in that. The US and the UK have only just started to do that, and it's 2014. The reason there are problems, and have been problems, with the Navy is that the Navy is pushing the pen. Now, the Army is still not allowing women into the military, and until you get equality, you're going to have women victimised because they're seen as something less than equal.
Right. I just want to go back to the point you were making before, like what is best for the victims. Now, you've spent a lot of time talking to the victims, and is it going to be a very difficult balance now between, I mean, you never can really get closure, but some kind of sense that, you know, that the crime has been investigated properly and pursued to its end versus I don't really want to go through that again and the whole thing's quite traumatic. Is that what the balance is? What do you think the victims themselves would want?
I think this is exactly the problem. They would not be comfortable, many of them would, but many of them will not be comfortable coming out in public, in a public inquiry like a Royal Commission, taking a stand and saying exactly what happened to them, which was pretty atrocious. And we have to safeguard them because they've already been victimised not once, not twice, but several times, because they became the victim within the military. What happened to them was known within the military, and the treatment they received was less than generous. It was certainly less than helpful. Mm. And so we have to protect them first. Mm. But the fact that there are the perpetuate, I can't say that word today.
Perpetrators.
I'm having trouble with that word. Too many P's in it. Yeah. Look, they're still in the military. The ones who are in the military should not be in the military. Our ADF actually has a very good reputation. But we have, and it's a very small minority of these individuals who are committing these crimes, who have committed these crimes. But if they have been protected, we must get rid of them. They must leave. And it doesn't matter how many chiefs say, this is good. What Morrison said was terrific. But if the middle ranking and the slightly higher ranking officers are not going to see his promises through, it's all smoke and mirrors.
Cheryl, yeah.
I don't think we should call royal commissions at the drop of a hat, especially for political payback, as we've seen. But I do think that the Royal Commission into Child Abuse has set some procedural precedents which have been really helpful, like the closed sessions. Mm. And I think most of the victims have said that it's the holding of people to account that, and finally being able to tell their story and be believed, that's been so powerful. And I suspect that as a society we are settling on that as a way to shine the spotlight on, hold people to account, and then sort of in a cleansing way move on. And so I appreciate the work that Elizabeth Broderick's done, but I don't think these men speaking at the top, as wonderful as they seem to be and as committed as they seem to be, is going to be enough to change the culture over time.
So you think a Royal Commission would work in this instance, or more radical
It's a hard
actions required?
call. It's not going to be as big as the Royal Commission into Child Abuse, I don't think, although that brought lots of more people forward. And there could be lots more people in the 1,600 formal ones that have already had something to say. But it's the social symbolism of holding people to account in a way that previous processes have failed to do.
Do you think it would be productive, Tom?
I'm not sure. I'm curious about the focus on ADFA, whether that is the epicentre of these kinds of incidents.
Well, let's ask Kathryn, who I suspect might have
Precisely.
some insights into that. Kathryn, what are your views on ADFA?
I was quite a strong supporter of ADFA, and it's turned out some of the most amazing young people of which we can be very proud. But I am beginning to think that there's a hardcore culture, and I'm going to really get some bad press out of this, that has come over from Duntroon. And I now believe that we must disband ADFA. I think we have to go back to the 3 different separate colleges, and then they can come together in perhaps an additional year to get the combined training. If I could just add also, I think part of the problem is that the military does not accept people who have not served. Now, a lot of people really have a poor education about the military. The terminology is wrong. I think I heard even Senator Xenophon saying recruits when he was referring to people who are going into ADFA. They aren't recruits. They're cadet officers, they're officer cadets, and they're midshipmen. Now, anybody who's talking on this subject, if they do not understand the system, if they do not understand the language, they immediately lose credibility within the military.
Now, if I can just ask you to explain, what would dismantling ADFA actually do in terms of tackling what you've described as an entrenched culture that's kind of, if not enabled, certainly ignored abuse now for decades? Because the separate entity, the Naval College, for example, yes, there was hazing there, but it was very mild. It wasn't anything like we're having now at ADFA. The Naval College had its own midshipmen, it had a cadet midshipman, and it still does train. Similarly with the Air Force, similarly with the Army, with Duntroon. They do their own training. It's only when the degrees came in that we had to establish UNSW at ADFA, and we give them degree training, and they have combined training because it was believed to be more economic to have them, and better for combined operations, to have them come together. But I don't think that's proving correct. I think the largest military force has overshadowed the other 2 military forces, and they have been lost. Their own cultures have been lost, and we also are now being treated all the same. And I think it's time that each of the militaries took back their own people and trained them separately.
Surely that sort of cultural issue is the sort of thing that a Royal Commission could come to grips with. And there's a gap of accountability here. You've got hundreds of people still in the military, and presumably of senior rank, who are offenders in this.
That's a separate issue, but that's a separate issue.
But these are issues, you know, the point of a Royal Commission is its capacity to embrace that sort of breadth. You know, to look at something which is clearly systemic, which is clearly deeply rooted and you know, profoundly large over a historic scale. And you need something of that sort of, you know, breadth of view to take all those elements and make something coherent from it. And as Cheryl says, the processes are there to protect victims in this. But what we're doing by not embracing those processes is protecting perpetrators.
We are. And you got the word right.